Welcome to Kidmissing TV. I am your host, Angelina Wilson, and I have a new microphone for Kidmissing right here. I've already tested it and it worked great. I think you guys will be very happy with the quality. This is the case of the Red Deer School. This is from Canada. In Saskatchewan. Now, back in the day, in Canada, unfortunately, one of the things that they did was that they took First Nations, which we would call Native Americans here in the U.S., or Indians, or American Indians, to residential schools. They took them away from the reservations, or they would take them and home them with white families. Basically force them to become white. Take their language away from them, their families away from them. It was a horrible thing. These two girls that talked about it, many have talked about it, but these two girls in particular, Bertha Poor and Rosina Winnie, speak about their lives being ruined by years spent at residential schools in northern Saskatchewan. Their grandfather tried to enroll them Bertha's grandfather tried to enroll her in public school, and the public school said, in quotes, "Go away, you savages." Seriously? It bothers me as a human being, but it also bothers me because I know that some of my family were Canadian Iroquois, and to think I could be related to some of the people that these atrocities happened to, is even more heartbreaking. Bertha said, quote, "My grandpa and my mom had to ask that they not cut my hair, and that was the first thing they done. It made me sick," said Poor. A doctor who later came to examine her concluded, and this is her quote, "I had a broken heart," end quote. How horrible. She was abused in every kind of way by staff and older students. Winnie recalled how her and other Indigenous girls were laid across their bed in their nightgowns and strapped for trying to run away. and the person who did it frothed at the mouth in what she described as zeal. The next day they were scrubbing the floor in their nightgowns on their hands and knees. She added that the indigenous girls gave their principal a Cree name, meaning the devil. There is a YouTube video called A Historic Survival. I don't know if it's on YouTube yet. If it is, I'll be sure and link it in the description. You can check out the cashproject.ca, that's C-A-C-H-E, and also the National Screen Institute's website, nsi-canada.ca. I'll put both of those links in the description. Wilton Littlechild is one of the commissioners on the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Called it a freeing of the spirit ceremony. Many children were sent away to residential schools and never came home. Hearing these horrifying stories shines a more intimate light on this country's historic injustices, said Commissioner, I'm going to butcher his name, the same person that said what I just said. Tschetter, T-S-C-H-E-T-T-E-R. We all know what the history was. Canada was a colonial country, but with these personal experiences, our perceptions of reality is changed. There were calls to action voted on by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and they're not moving very quickly with it, evidently. The graves should be found sooner, and the history should be talked about more. End quote. I could not agree with you more, Commissioner. I actually saw a documentary about this a long time ago with my mom. Not this particular school, but just what they did to the First Nations people. And Kat, I hope you're not insulted by this video, because it's in no way that way. I just wanted to talk about, I mean, we weren't very nice to Indigenous people here either, believe me. Children who went to boarding school tried to run away, died trying to run away, and never came home, he said. The ceremony that they want to have, they believe will free them to the other world, whether you call it heaven or happy hunting ground, he said. The Red Deer Industrial School was built by the federal government and operated by the Methodist Church from 1893 to 1919. Well, some of them I know from watching documentaries, like I said, they were still taking those kids in the 50s and 60s. Excuse me. Excuse me. Red Deer is 160 kilometers south of Edmonton, which would be 200 and some miles. Forgive me, I am American, so metric is not. Excuse me, metric is not my thing. According to federal records, a third of the 62 students admitted between 1893 and 1895 died at the school or within a decade of leaving it. In a 1907 report, the federal chief medical officer said the school had the worst mortality rate in the industrial schools examined across Canada. Holy crap. Excuse me. Between 1893 and 1919, over 300 First Nation children were taken from their homes from across the West and placed into the government-sanctioned church-run residential school at the Red Deer Industrial School. Across the river from Fort Namandu in Alberta, they were forbidden, as I mentioned, they were forbidden to speak their language, honor their heritage, and were kept from having contact with their parents. And it says, when researching unidentified remains, keep these families and these children in your minds. There's so few unidentified remains from Canada online to begin with. The records were terrible, so there's no good list of who's buried, both staff and children, at the little cemetery by the Kidmissing, Kinnikinnick, Kinnikinnick Creek. Many of the old markers have rotted away, others simply disappeared over the many decades. Albert Lightning of the First Nations, the Ermineskin First Nations near Habina told his children that their uncle was buried in that forgotten cemetery. He was 12 when he was called in from the field, arriving just in time to see the body of his 6-year-old brother David being put into the grave. Then Albert was sent back to work. He didn't even know his brother was sick until they threw him in that hole, said his son Rick, now a grandfather himself, and chair of the committee planning Wednesday's ceremony. Albert died at the age of 104. His grandson said, quote, he was really bitter about his brother's death because David was so young. We didn't know anything about him. My father never spoke much about him. Wait. Oh no, that's his son, not his grandson. Um, my father never spoke much about him. That's so sad. End quote. Well, I added to that, so sad, but his father would have liked the ceremony that they had. He actually sneaked onto the property and prayed for his brother. Now, official records say that David was buried in the city cemetery, not the residential cemetery, but the records are so old and fragmented, we don't know who is buried there, Rick Lightning said. We're doing it for all of the children, not just one individual child. It's basically it basically was an Indian ceremony, an indigenous ceremony to free their spirits. It's what they believe. And I can't, sorry, I'm cold. Fault them for that. No, that's the wrong way of putting it. I think it's a great idea. When I say I can't fault them for that, what I mean is I understand why they would want to honor their dead. We honor ours. You know, we have funerals and that sort of thing. They just do it a little differently. We call it a cemetery, they call it a burying ground. And their burial grounds are very sacred to them. And we've built over so many of them and destroyed so many of them without even caring. And not just in Canada, here in the United States. I mean, we had the Walk of Tears. I forget what it was called, but it was a horrible, miles and miles walk that we forced a bunch of Indigenous people to endure. As a matter of fact, there was a segment on Unsolved Mysteries about a girl who was taken away from her Indigenous family and adopted to a white family in the U.S. from Canada. Because even, like I said, into the 50s and 60s, they would take kids away from Indigenous families. It's just beyond wrong. At least we didn't go that far. We did enough. I apologize that I can't think of the name of that walk. But most of the Native peoples that we forced to do that didn't survive. Let me know in the comments. I think that, sorry, I have allergies. There needs to be more recognition of this stuff. Like I said, my mother and I saw a great documentary about people who ended up in these schools. Think about the White House boys. And think about innocent children being thrown into these places. A lot of the White House boys were innocent children too. But it's the same kind of situation. The man that I interviewed for the White House boys was an innocent child. He was an orphan. And I'll link the book, The White House Boys. I actually have the book. Or had the book. Because I read it. And I'll link their website as well. Because I believe the two stories go with each other. So some of those children were taken for absolutely no reason too. These industrial schools, boarding schools, were, well, they were forced labor camps, first of all. They were also, let's see what, oh, okay, supposed to be kiddie jails for kids that did bad things. And so when you start mixing actual juvenile delinquents in with innocent kids, that's a problem. And then with adults with no heart or soul that are supposed to be caring for them, yeah, it ends up being horrendous. So I'll try to remember to do those links in the description, and if I can find the video, I'll have the video in the cards. Really, any one of the videos that, any one of the documentaries that talks about this stuff, but I want that particular one because you get to hear from those two women. That must have been made a long time ago. If it truly closed in 1919, which I don't think it necessarily did, based on my own knowledge of what they did, and knowing they did it right up into the 60s. And like I said, the Unsolved Mysteries segment, I don't know enough information about it. I do know she found her family. Enough information about it to look it up, to get a link or anything, because it was solved. So, but yeah. Speaking of which, there was another case on Unsolved Mysteries of a girl who, and this was also solved, she found the man, had been put in juvie. She'd been living with a stepfather. I guess her mother had passed away, and he was badly abusing her in an intimate manner, and he got her put away, and she was on the van going to juvie from court, and the driver of the van listened to her. I didn't do anything, and he'd heard that before, so he didn't think a lot of it. And then she said, you know, my stepfather's a cop, and he got me put here because he's been doing things to me. And that perked up his ears. He did end up finding her aunt and uncle and was able to help her get out and get into the custody of her aunt and uncle, and she was searching for him. And they found him, and she reunited with him. This was many years later, like 20, 30 years later. And I don't know if her stepfather ever paid for what he did because he was a policeman. And nobody believed her anyway, but except this one man, this one officer who drove the van. Thank the good Lord. I apologize if this is a long video, but it was important. Thank you so much for joining me. There will not be a poster for this video. Because there's no way to make a poster for this video. But God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you Wednesday. For another video as we roll through May. I need to put my videos in order. They're over there. So I don't have to go through which one. I usually have them in order by now. Anyway, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 by the 4th of July. 300 on Punky's World. And 30 on Punky's Pro Wrestling. Bye guys. God bless you.